Hello guys and welcome back to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. Once again I'm Greg and this is the Starting 11 show, another big one, first of a new manager. Today I'll be guessing Sean Dyche's starting 11. Of course with a new manager there's always a bit of a teething period, you don't know exactly how they're going to set up, what personnel under the first game. With Sean Dyche there's a little less mystery in it. I know he's got the stereotypical 4-4-2. Sometimes used to play a 4-3-3, but typically we saw the 4-4-2, and I think that's what I'm going to try and fill out today. We can make some guesses on personnel as well. We've got a bit of injury news, of course. Michael Keane's fitter, apparently. Godfrey's close. I don't think he'll be able to feature in this one. And James Garner is slightly further off still, sadly. So as I say, we'll go with the customary 4-4-2. And the more I look at this on paper, the more I actually quite come to like the look of it. We've got a mix of players who Dyche has experience of playing with. Of course, Tarkowski, Dwight McNeil, Michael Keane, in fact. So, you know, these aren't just players that he's played with before. These are players, Keane and McNeil specifically, that, you know, he's the only manager that have sort of managed to get a tune out of them. So we know that some of the personnel have experience working with him, and we have others who I think will fit the system. So normally where a manager comes in and you've got this mosaic of influences, players brought in from 4-5 previous regimes, different directors of football, different managers. I think having a slightly thinner squad, and it hurts me to say, but a squad sprinkled with slightly less quality, it means I think we've got a slightly better cultural fit when it comes to the 11 who will be on the pitch and the manager on the touchline. I think what we will see though is a slight departure from what has been an Everton style of play. Maybe one of the only things we could hold down as an identity recently, which is the sort of roaming fullbacks, Baines, Dean, Mikalenko, sort of that lineage of and it's not been so strong on the right hand side since Coleman's injury, but we've got this sort of history of the bombing on left back. I don't think we'll see that under Dyche. His philosophy tends to be making the defenders defend, which sounds silly in the modern game, but I think we'll see Holgate and Godfrey maybe deployed more as a right back and a left back. That won't happen necessarily this game, of course, with Godfrey not back yet. But expect to see those deployed a little bit more. I do worry about left back and right back perhaps as our position at the moment, where maybe we don't suit Dyche so much in terms of personnel. Looking at the team, I haven't actually got anything written down here as a starting 11, so we'll just sort of go in and talk through position by position. Pickford, of course, in goal, doesn't need much conversation. With Keane out, I think there's definitely an interesting conversation to be had when Keane returns as to whether him and Tarkowski as a partnership, whether Dyche will favour going back to what he knows. But for now we'll go Tarkowski and Connor Cody. Seems like the obvious option, doesn't it? Left back, right back, we're kind of hampered by injury, so I think we'll probably see Mikalenko and Coleman, but expect them to be much more defensively minded. And I think that suits Coleman's game a lot more than it suits Mikalenko's necessarily. You know, and again, there's a conversation to be had once Godfrey's back from injury. Will he be a left back for the rest of the season? I personally can see that happening. So for now, we'll go with the usual back four. In front of them, screening, mostly just there to defend the back line. At this point in time, I think we see Idrissa Gueye and Onana. Great to see Onana stick around after the window and have so much to say about the project and wanting to stay with the club. Yeah, I think those two suit the role quite well. It begs the question as to whether certain players have a future in terms of this midfield. I think Garner could be a useful player, speaking specifically to his range of passing in that role. I think he could be particularly nifty as deployed in that pivot. You know, Iwobi won't be in this midfield. He doesn't work in a pivot. He proved that under a couple of managers. Tom, we've only ever really seen him in a pivot with, is it Morgan Schneidlin in that fateful season? So maybe we see him in that role if injuries hamper Onana or Gueye. Decore I'm not 100% sold on, so Gueye and Onana there to screen the back four at the moment and dig in, I think, and then it becomes who plays left mid, who plays right mid. And this is actually an interesting issue because limiting our attacking output means that there will be more competition for places when it comes to our forward line. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And it's maybe in this system that we see we do have some sort of depth when it comes to our attacking options. Whereas in previous systems we were trying to cobble together an attack out of spare change. So, as I said, under Sean Dyche, McNeil seems a different kind of player. I think we'll probably see him deployed on the left. There's obviously a question as to whether Demarai Gray, who has been one of our best players this season, has a place in this team. More traditional winger than he is a left or right midfielder. It's about who suits midfielder over winger, I guess. We have a few players who can swap between both. Andros Townsend being one of them when he's back from injury. I think he will suit this system. Iwobi might suit a midfield position more than he does a wing position, as he's better at getting in those spaces in the midfield and being able to drive. His final ball from out wide is weak, and that's why he didn't suit being a winger and suited more being on the inside. So I think my estimate at the moment is going to be McNeil and Iwobi on either side. And then it's a question of who goes up front with Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin will, of course, be one of the men. And then we have a list, don't we? We have Rondon. No, I'll strike that name off straight away. Could Demarai Gray be deployed in this system? He's not very typical of a second striker for Sean Dyche. Can I see him being used to bridge the gap between our very defensive midfield and Calvert-Lewin? Possibly. Could he provide that fast counter-attack from central positions that we need if we're defending all men behind the ball? Potentially. It could work. I don't see it as the right fit personally. I think we'd much more likely see one of Neil Maupay or Ellis Sims. I love the idea of Ellis Sims. Of course, he played in the front two at Sunderland and flourished. But it took, of course, a step up from the Championship. I don't think Dyche will see that as a bigger problem as maybe Lampard did. I think Ellis Sims could get a lot of minutes as we round this season off, because he would fit in that front two, and if he can perform in one sub appearance, I can see him really making that position his own. I fear we probably start with Maupay in this one. He feels like a Sean Dyche second striker. So that's going to be my estimate. Of course, when it comes to the injuries coming back, I think we got places in this team for Keane, potentially. I think we got a place for Godfrey, certainly in the back line. I think Garner will force his way eventually into that midfield, and I can see Andros Townsend maybe replacing Iwobi on that right side as we move forward. I guess that's the team. What do we think of it? That's Pickford in goal, a back line of Coleman, Cody, Tarkowski and Mikolenko for now. Gay and Onana midfield, very defensive ideology there. McNeil and Iwobi. Really, I'm quite disgusted at myself for not having Demarai Gray in this team, considering he's been our shining light this season. It's just where he would fit. Do we take McNeil out of the team? Do we maybe deploy McNeil in the front too? Have I'm not going to change it. I could be here all day. McNeil and Iwobi, and then Maupay, soon to be Sims, and Calvert-Lewin up front. Do you think that's got enough to stay up? I personally think that is pound for pound better than a lot of teams Dyche has kept up this season. He said that himself. It'd be interesting to know how much of the decision being made is based on these first training sessions where he gets a view of players' fitness. Obviously, his scouting team will tell him about suitability, but for Dyche, what's going to be so important is practically can these players last 90 minutes in these positions. And I imagine some of them won't be able to. It'd be interesting to see who's in and who's out. So let me know what you guys would line up. Would you even stick with the 4-4-2? I think there's a lot of interesting puzzle pieces to be fit together. Let me know what the team is, and do you think we'll be able to stay up with it? Cheers, guys.